Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Jake. This channel is called Jake of All Trades, and today, in an effort to try and get through as many Jinjer, Baby Metal, and The Warning songs as I possibly can before I see them at Summerfest on July 5th, I am going to be checking out a fairly highly requested one from Jinjer, so they're probably going to play it at Summerfest, so I don't want it spoiled. Bit of Consciousness, and there's a studio version and a live version that I'm going to be checking out to do a compare and contrast. And before we get into it, I do want to give a shout out to the people who suggested it. Like I said, it was fairly highly requested, so I want to give a shout out to Bugman1974, Coder for Liberty, David James 6036 with 2 votes, JF Fisher 5318 with 2 votes, M Luxembourg with 2 votes as well. So thank you guys for suggesting these. I can't wait to check it out. Without any further ado, let's get started. All right, here we go. Jinjer, Bit of Consciousness, official video. Napalm Records. Let's go. Oh. Going straight into the growls. The instrumentals are just so beefy. Just as I say that, we get very melodic. Love the guitar counter melody to Tatiana's singing there. She possessed. There it is. She had like the black covers on her eyes or something. It's really unnerving. Ooh. That was a cool slow-mo shot. I love seeing the cymbal like vibrate like that with that slow-mo shot. Growing roots from her hands now? Definitely need to check out the lyrics after this. She seems possessed. Ooh, nice harmony there. Forgive my bobbing out of rhythm. I struggle with these strange time signatures. All right, here we go. Pit of Consciousness, live in Kiev. Here we go. Ooh. It's a lot more high end on the live version here. Ooh, I love the light show too. She's just growling so casually. It's like, whatever. Gosh, the scale choices are really neat. Love that guitar. Those super complicated chords too are like. Who's doing the harmony on that? Like I could hear the harmony on her voice. Oh, I love what they're doing in the background. Kind of mimics what they were doing in the music video. God, the tone that she's able to produce is... Gosh. I love the complexities in the guitar and then the bass and everything. Just love this beefy sprint to the end. And how abrupt it ends too, holy crap. All right, per usual with the compare and contrast, I went back and reviewed both versions section by section to pull out everything that I could. And just to give some overall thoughts before I kind of go through it by section, I love the signature crunchiness of the guitar and the bass. It just has that, like, it's fleshed out, it's full, but it's also got that bite, that edge to it. I'm absolutely in love with. And then the song definitely seemed to be produced differently than some of the more recent songs. So some of the more recent ones kind of had like an extra like beefiness to them. I think it's just mixed differently in this. I don't exactly know how to put my finger on it, but I can just tell it's produced differently than tracks on their most recent album. And then one of the things that I could sort of pick out were that, at least initially, it seemed like the vocals were a little bit more part of the soundscape rather than standing out over the instrumentals. But maybe that's just me, maybe that's just my headphones, maybe that's my untrained ear. I'm not entirely sure, but there was just a little bit of difference there. And then one of the other things I noticed on the live version that was kind of interesting was that the harmonies were still on Tatiana's vocals during one of the sections a little bit later in the song, which I thought was kind of interesting. Makes me wonder if there was like a help track or something that was being played in the background to what they were performing. I'm not entirely sure. I wish I understood the mechanics of the live sound a little bit better. I always thought it'd be kind of fascinating to maybe like volunteer, maybe at a church or something where they'd like have like a mixing board and just like learn some of the tricks that they do to give the sound that's coming through the monitors a little bit better. I gotta find a church to do that or something. I think that might be my only opportunity to actually learn that stuff. Anyway, I digress. This song is a lot more progressive metal. It's not like a radio style, hey, here's our intro, here's our first verse, here's our pre-chorus, here's our first chorus, then we're going back to the intro, then we're going back to the verse, and then the pre-chorus, and then the second chorus, bridge/breakdown, final chorus, outro, done. Like, this is definitely more of a progressive song. And so I don't label them at the sections that I'm going to be going through as such, as like, oh, this is the verse or whatever. There are some repeated elements, but overall it's a progression. And I found that the heavier parts of the song were a little bit more regular in terms of time signature, where I could actually kind of like bob along to it a little bit more regularly, whereas in the arpeggiated sections where I'm just like, I am not sure what time signature is going on here. That was my weakness in music theory, was I could do the chord progressions and the harmonies and be able to identify intervals and whatnot. But then once we got to time signatures, I'm like, I have no idea. But overall, between the two different versions, the live and the music video were very consistent. There weren't really many variations between the two. They kept the live performance faithful to the studio recording. And the only major differences that I could identify was that it felt like there was a little bit more fullness to the studio version, more fleshed out. I felt like that the live version may have had a little bit more high-end scratchiness to it, for lack of a better way of saying. So we had the intro, and then we get to the scream section. And one of the things I kind of noticed throughout the song was that in the screaming sections, there was a lot more of the zeros and ones and the overall beefy, scratchy dumminess to the guitar, I guess, for lack of a better way of saying, not like dummy, but, you know, I'm borrowing like a Nick Nocturnal term, you know? Anyway, then we had, in that first section with the screaming, one of the things I noticed with Tatiana is that in the music video studio version, it was more voiceless growls, whereas I felt like in the live version, a little bit more of her natural voice kind of came through on those growls. They were still pretty comparable, but there was just like a subtlety in how she was delivering them in the live version. Then we get into the clean section, and the guitar was a lot more arpeggiated, and there was a lot more runs up on both the guitar and the bass. It wasn't just like the dummy thick zeros and ones sort of stuff. Like they'd maybe ground there, but then like work their way up. And that's where Tatiana did her clean singing. And so you had, at least for the beginning part, then they kind of switch it up later, but at least for like the first few sections, it's like if Tatiana was screaming, you had more of the zeros and ones, the pounding double bass in there, stuff. And then in the clean section, you had a lot more of the arpeggiated runs on the guitar and bass and some of the weirder time signatures. And then this continued like this for a bit. Then we had a section where there was just instrumental with some Tatiana screams, which were just awesome to hear. And it sounded like it was a bit of a combination. Well, there was more of the heavy drums, but then the arpeggiated part of that section led back into Tatiana's clean singing and more arpeggiated stuff in the next section. Visually speaking, in that instrumental section where she's just screaming, you start to get the hint of her getting possessed. Like her eyes, maybe it's just the way the camera is, but like it looked like she had like one of those like black contacts in where it just makes it look like she's just straight up demon possessed. And you had like the aura kind of coming off of her. And as it progressed, like it turned from just like a smoky sort of aura, like what you'd see at like a campfire where there's just like too much heat. It starts kind of creating like branches overall, and you know, she's starting to wig out a little bit more with her head and arms like starting to fly in unnatural ways. Pit of consciousness, it makes me think of maybe you're like trapped in possession, like you're not in control of yourself, but you're having to watch as something else is controlling you, sort of thing. Maybe this has a reference to like alcoholism or something, because in some of the previous reactions that I've done, people have commented that this song was about her fight with alcoholism, and maybe it's like a sense of she's kind of possessed by the person that she is under the influence, and she's just kind of having to watch as like she acts outside of her own will. I don't know. Maybe that's what she's referencing here. I'm not entirely sure. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Nicely, please. So anyway, that's kind of what I was taking from it. And then as I referenced, there was already like this distinction between like the zeros and ones and the screaming, and then the arpeggiated and the singing. And then it kind of muddies the waters a little bit more later on, where in the final section, there's a bit of a mesh between the arpeggiated and the dummy thick zeros and ones and the clean singing over that. And then there's a section where there's the arpeggiated stuff, but then she's screaming over that. So it's like, oh, we kind of took the trope, for lack of a better way of saying it, and then we just Uno reverse carded it and just kind of put it all together. It was kind of cool at how they did that. In terms of differences, I remember like during the transitions, a couple transitions, you know, there's the guitar part where it was just isolated in the studio version in the left channel, whereas in the live it's center panned. So that's like the big difference. Like again, there's not a lot of major differences between the two different versions. Another thing that I did enjoy that I'm glad that they sort of kept in the live version was I referenced the smoky like heat coming off, like showing the possession and how it was branching off into like something else, maybe demonic-ish. But they kept that in the background monitors in the live version, which I thought was a pretty cool creative choice. I'm glad that they kept that to kind of have that little bit of tie-in to the music video. Finally, as we're going into the outro, you have just like the double bass driving, again borrowing a Nick Nocturnal term here, like the dummy zeros of the guitar and the bass and stuff, and then the screaming. It's just like a sprint to the end, and just a wonderful way to cap off the song. Those are the things that I noticed with this particular song. Let me know what you heard in this and add to it so I can learn a bit more about it. I always love learning more about the music and the intricacies, especially with a band as intellectually oriented as Jinjer. So that's it for this video. Please leave a like on it if you did enjoy it. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more, and turn on the notifications so that you don't miss anything from me going forward. And then I also want to thank Jonas S. for supporting me on Patreon. I really, really appreciate it. And for any of you guys that want to get a shout out in the next video, drop a comment letting me know what I should check out next. That's it for this video. Enjoy the rest of your day. God bless you, and rock on.